Merry Christmas! A little early here on the Bible Forum. This is Sunday night, just before Christmas 2019. I want to talk to you a little bit about the angels of Christmas. Have you ever thought about them? When you read the so-called Christmas story in the Bible, you have to be struck with the participation of angels. The angel, Gabriel, an archangel of God, brought news to Zacharias, a priest of Israel, that his wife, Elizabeth, would bear a child, and that he, Zacharias, should name that child John, a special man who would go before Messiah to turn the hearts of many to the Lord. In Luke chapter 1, verse 11, an angel tells Joseph what's going on and what he must do. The angel was seen standing on the right side of the altar of incense. The angel's name was Gabriel. He brought the message to Mary. "Hail," he said, "thou that art highly favored, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women." And he also said, "Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God." Luke chapter 1. In Luke chapter 2, the angel of the Lord tells the shepherds of his birth, of this birth. The angel of the Lord appears a dozen times in the Old Testament narrative, beginning with Hagar as she flees the wrath of her mistress Sarah, Genesis 16, ending with Zechariah, promising great things for Israel. Angels surround the birth of Jesus. Angels herald Christ's coming to the shepherds in the field at night, after which the angel of the Lord, a euphemism for Jesus, came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were very afraid. The angel appears many times in the biblical narrative. An angel strengthens Jesus in his agony prior to the crucifixion. The night in which Jesus was betrayed, an angel from heaven appeared as Jesus was praying in agony to strengthen him. Luke 22. The angel of the Lord told Philip to go into Gaza, into the desert, finding the Ethiopian eunuch reading the prophet Isaiah, not knowing what he was reading. Acts 8, verse 26. An angel of God appeared to Cornelius in Acts 10 in response to his fervent praying, telling him to send for Peter. The angel of the Lord released Peter from prison in Acts 12. Also in Acts 12, it was the angel of the Lord who smote Herod, who was then eaten of worms and died. The book of Revelation of the Lord Jesus Christ contains many references to angels. The opening chapters with the 7 churches reference the angel of the church in every instance, which could be, probably is, the pastor, who is God's messenger, God's angel to those people. The remaining narrative in Revelation is filled with references to angels, good and bad, many of which are in heaven, we being given that information as events unfold. The point here is that at the very least, God has been shepherding this process every step of the way, from the conception to the crucifixion to the establishment of churches. It continues throughout the church age and on into the judgments. The message here is that we are not alone. We are not simply working things out on our own terms, nor on our own timetable. In the worst of times, humanly speaking, God was at work and continues to be. He was setting up, tearing down, preparing, judging, and he's not done. In fact, as the time grows closer to Christ's return, we will no doubt see more and more of God's hand at work, if we know where and how to look. It's comforting to know God has all things firmly under control, that there are spirit beings watching, protecting, directing as we stumble along this crazy road. Even the disastrous things, the frustrating things, the destructive things. The problem here is not in what God is doing, but in what we perceive and or expect. I mean, cancer is a terrible disease. It kills in horrible ways. And we ask, where's God in all of that? And the Bible answers back. He's right where he was in the things we count as blessings. How? Well, primarily in the message. And the message is, we're not perfect. The world is not perfect. There are destructive diseases because of sin, many of which we cannot avoid. Some are the product of the way we live, the choices we've made. These choices have consequences, many of which we cannot anticipate. And so the overall message is, be careful. Live a godly life. And let God do what God does. With the world, with our bodies, with our lives. Do it with hope, with faith, with confidence. Are you born again of the Spirit of God? If you can answer yes, then you have the Spirit of God in you. The Bible says He's in you both to will, that's motivational, and to do. What? Whatever God desires. Whatever God hath said. Whatever God has determined for you. The true Christian is able to accept what God gives. What we create for ourselves is often another issue. Those things are often hard to handle. You drink a fifth of whiskey every day for 30 years, don't be surprised when you get cirrhosis of the liver. And don't blame God. You text while you're driving, don't be surprised when you run into the back of another car. Life is a series of this for that. And much of our troubles we have created. More and more young people don't know that. They don't know the consequences of their actions, in part because they haven't been trained in this skill. How do you do that? How do you train a child? You train a child with consistent penalties for doing or not doing. You teach children there are penalties that come from disobedience. There are problems that arise from not doing it right. In this world, children do not learn those important life lessons, one of which is in the Bible. It says you reap what you sow. So how are you doing? How are your children doing? Parents today are largely setting their children up for failure, not consciously, not deliberately, but as they fail to train them, to prepare them. See, training requires instruction. But just telling a child, educating the child, is not all there is to it. We instruct the child, but then we pattern the child in the way it must be done. We add to that consistency. We never go back on what we have said is right and good. We never do it a different way, an easier way. We pattern with consistency. And we are faithful to correct when they do it wrong or they don't do it at all. And through our life and what we do in our home, we structure for success. There's only one way to live in this household. It's with this structure. That structure comes with rewards and punishment, training in righteousness. Do you know any parents who do this sort of thing consciously, purposely? Watch them. It's amazing what parents think is parenting today. The consequence is the children are growing up without godly values, without a healthy fear, meaning respect. They expect things they need and want. They reject the idea of starting at the bottom and earning their way up. They do slipshod work and expect both praise and reward. And that's if they show up every day. But life demands training. Training demands penalties and reward. But training produces men and women who are equipped to do the job they were hired to do. And the same is true in the home. It's where this sort of training must begin. Of course, someone, a responsible parent, must be home to do it. If the child is at home, a parent or grandparent must also be there. Up to what age? Until they're out of the home, or they have demonstrated the consistency, the skill, the commitment necessary to be alone in a home with cell phones, computers, and all sorts of digital images. Children are not born with this kind of discipline or commitment. Parents must train them, must inculcate this every minute of every day for years, decades. It isn't happening anymore. And our culture is showing us the result. You see, God has set up a plan and a system. But God did not put two people in a garden and say, figure it out. God has shepherded His plan and His people every step of the way. Like a parent who knows his children don't have the big picture nor the skills. Not yet. Are you paying attention? Or are you just taking the easy way out? Your grandchildren are depending on you. The culture is depending on you. The world is depending on you doing it right. Otherwise, it all comes unglued. Don't believe me? Look around.